Hi, this is Don, and I want to show you how to do a regression problem from Chapter 9. And we're going to do it using Excel, but this time we're going to use the PHStat add-in to make it go a little bit faster. Here is our problem. We've got to find the regression line for this data, and then we want to get the regression equation. We want to plot it, and then we want to predict for some values. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to click on the little icon, open an Excel. Down at the bottom, it'll drop it, and I'll double click on that. The spreadsheet opens up here. Remember, we got to click on Enable Editing. There we go. Get our data here. We've got our X values and our Y values, and it's nice that they tell us which is X and which is Y. All we're going to do is click on Add-ins, PHStat, Regression, Simple Linear Regression. Brings up this dialog. We need to put the Y variable in first. Click on the little button. I'm going to highlight those. Make sure you get all of them. Click the little button again. Get that in there. Now we want the X variable. Click on that button. Highlight those again. Get those in there. Make sure that first cell is the label, which it does. We're going to run this at 95. I don't think it really asked us. We want the regression statistics table, and I'm going to click on the ANOVA and coefficients table, which you may or may not need, and then you can get the residuals from residuals plot if you want. We're going to get the scatter plot. For those of you taking 430, you may be able to need to use the Durbin-Watson statistic and the confidence interval prediction. I'm going to go ahead and click on that for this problem, and I'm going to predict for just one of the values to get started there. I'm going to put in a 2 because that's one of the values it asks us to predict for. And then I'm going to click OK. And I forgot to put 95% in there. All right. We get this output, and this is the standard ANOVA output for regression. It gives us our R-square and our adjusted R-square. We get our the ANOVA here, and it shows that it is significant. Get our F value and our mean square, some of the squares values. We get our intercept and our coefficient for the X there of 37.992 and 4.994, and they're both significant. So we needed that. Let's get our scatter plot over here. It's nice. You need that for the second part of the question. On this particular one, though, notice they did not truncate the y-axis, and of course not the x-axis, since we've got a point that's got a 0 value for x. But on some problems in my stat lab, the ones they show you will have truncated x and y-axis, so just be careful of that. We've got our equation over here. I'm going to move it so you can see it a little better. And there's our 4.944x plus 37.992 and our r-square again. Okay, now we can use that equation to do the prediction, but yes, we've got our confidence interval and our prediction here for the value of 2, and it shows that the predicted value, y hat, is 47.88, which is the answer in the MyStatLab problem of 47.9. And we want next to predict for 2.5, so all I've got to do is put 2.5 in there, let it recalculate. Our y hat is 50.352, and that rounds to 50.4. We could put 14 in here and get a y hat, but remember 14 is way, way, way outside. Let's go back to our scatter plot. 14 is over here somewhere, so you really shouldn't be predicting anything that's not within the boundary of your data set. So that would be not meaningful for the 14. And then the last one is, I think, 1.5. To recalculate, we get a predicted y hat of 45.4. So I think that's everything you need to answer these questions. Of course, in 430, you'll need more information, your confidence interval and prediction intervals, and you can go ahead and get your residuals as well. So I think that's it. That's how you do simple linear regression using Excel with PHStat add-in.